We are one of the things we inherited from the British, whether this is a good thing or bad thing, I'll let others judge on that, but we have 3 levels of government in our country. We've got a federal government that I work for, state government, sounds in a similar way in terms of UAE, but we've also got a local council. The federal government raises taxes, deals with the big ticket issues, defence, immigration, social security payments. State and territory generally runs the hospitals, the schools, police, etc., prisons, and local council generally does the roads and rubbish collection and other things in that area. But it means it's very challenging, and for citizens of Australia, this slide just shows you that if you were a woman who'd lost their partner for whatever reason, with a child with a disability, there is a lot on offer in Australia in terms of entitlements and things that a family might be entitled to. So it's very confusing, very complicated, and our big reason for existence, how do we simplify that? How do we make it easier for citizens to get the services that the government wants them to get in a seamless, simplified way, which is really one of our key drivers. The Department of Human Services is one of the biggest departments in the Australian government. We're a quarter of the Australian public service, and we distribute Australian dollars, about $144 billion. So that's a third of all of the outlays that the Australian government raises. We distribute that to individuals and families, and it can range from an age pension payment through to a co-payment for medical services, through to some assistance for job seekers and unemployed, through to students going to university. So it is a big range of things, over 200 different payments and services, 1,000 access points, and about 36,000 staff. The world that I live in, the job that I have, is in the operational areas. So what I look after across the country is all the service centres, the call centres, there's 26 of those, the processing centres, about 200 of those across Australia, and very much concentrating in the operational elements. You can see here, this is where we've got our sites and facilities. Again, you can see some big concentration down the, I can't do the pointer on this, down towards on the one side where the densest population is, but we still have to maintain a service presence in the arid inland areas in the middle of the country. We have our First Nation people, the Indigenous Australians, who live in isolated communities, and we're charged with the responsibility of providing services to those families and individuals, which is a huge challenge for us. How's the Department of Human Services created? This is, we had Centrelink as a large agency. We then put in there an agency called Medicare, which delivers the medical rebate services, and a child support agency for families separating, and a separate smaller agency, the Department of Human Services and the Commonwealth Rehabilitation Service, into one massive capability. And what we're trying to do is integrate these service delivery agencies to deliver better services for all Australians. We've got our mission and the sorts of things that I'm sure, the vision, mission and strategic themes, but we clearly say we've got all of our customers of Australia are our customers, and excellence in the provision of government service to every Australian, and it's an important mandate for us. This gives you a sense of what we're trying to create now. We've got how we bring it all together. Very much what we've learned here is work in what we call life events. So rather than people having to understand payments in particular things, what we try and do is structured around families, around job seekers, around carers, around young people, around your health. And so we structure the payments for the sorts of things that our customers need every day. But it's a challenge to create that single website with over 200 payments and services, and I'll come back a bit to that. Where we've come from, we created Centrelink in 1997. The then Prime Minister of the country, similar to your, His Excellency, His Highness today, talking about a one-stop shop. That's what our Prime Minister said in 1997 about the creation of a one-stop shop for government services. So we created Centrelink, and then in 2004 created this portfolio called Human Services, and then last year created a single Department of State called the Department of Human Services. What's important about it, we do not do policy, we just do service delivery. And I think that's an important ingredient for our success. These are some of the things we put in place in a recent time. I'm going to talk a little bit about service delivery reform as our burning platform and reason for existence. Talk about the integration and how we try to get the culture right in delivering services. This slide just shows what we try and do across the organisation, and I'm sure you have a similar thing in what you do in 2021, but this is trying to get the alignment right across, up and down the organisation. So I expect all the people that work to me to have a sense of the strategic plan, where they fit in the strategic plan, and they will have done their own business plans to put that in place. We've got the major drivers. I mentioned a little about the ageing of the population. One of the other things that we're finding from citizens, and I'm sure it's the same here, is citizens now are increasingly after it now. They don't want to wait for it. We've got an unbelievable saturation rate for usage of smartphones. Upwards of 60% of mobile devices now in our country are smartphones. I think we heard the Koreans being at 100% in the plenary session. But there's huge drivers for us to be doing more with less and providing better service to our citizens. So in that sense, we've set forward this ambitious and innovative platform called Service Delivery Reform. We're trying to tailor our work and activity. What we're trying to do is move more and more of our simple work either to the customers themselves or simplifying the processes. And so what we concentrate on those who need more help and more assistance. In one of our major kind of things that we're doing, we're putting again the job seeker who needs to find a pathway into employment at the centre, and making sure all the other service providers, whether it's government service providers, whether it's private service providers, or whether it's local government or state government, put them all around that individual to work in tandem. So if you saw that earlier slide about the single parent, how do you actually make it more coherent for the individual and more seamless? We're very much wrapping our services around the individual, so trying to bring the whole package together, and putting a big emphasis on joining all the dots up for individuals. We're looking at case coordination, and so again, for those who are in most need, how can we actually ensure that all the things on offer for an individual or family we can think about, and we put it into one package. And so we've got a number of trial sites across the country we're putting in place. So it's really taking the time, more time to talk to people, rather than just seeing them for simple, straightforward transactions. How can we actually look beyond the individual single point of need and extend our service offer in that direction? We're improving our access. I showed you a little bit about our single web capability. Unfortunately, our single phone's a challenge for us. I forget how many phone lines we have, but we've probably got more than 100 of different telephone numbers. And so we're challenged at the moment to think through how do you actually provide a citizen-centric approach with a single number. And many of you would be familiar with, and I think you have a similar approach here in the UAE. We've challenged because people know those phone numbers. How do you migrate a situation where you've got a lot of existing phone numbers? We're extending our services, creating more one-stop shops, and I'll come to that a bit more, and also increasing our mobile and outreach approach and direction. This is one of our very favourite sites, our single shopfront site, and you can see there a broad range of services, both Commonwealth or federal services and state services, as well as non-government organisations. And my colleague Tracy Sheether here in the red is responsible for running this particular site, and we're very proud. We've got a call centre there. We have a raft of innovative practice and approaches, and we've also tried to employ local people in that facility who come from special needs backgrounds, people with a disability, people with Indigenous heritage. So we're trying to create a kind of a triple bottom line approach to to that service, and I think we're getting outstanding results because it's connected to community and assisting in that area. This is our streaming approaches. We're really trying to triage the customer to the service that they most need, and using electronic means to do that. And one of our important innovations that we've put in place right across our service centres, over 480 sites across the country, is what we call customer liaison officers, who literally meet you at the entrance as you come in to the service centre, act as a concierge or a maitre d' that you would experience in a hotel or a restaurant, and try to triage you to the appropriate service approach. Sometimes we will have some people who are not happy about attending. We do things for some people where we actually have a role to make sure job seekers keep to their schedule of diary and employment activities. So in some situations, these staff also try to calm things down and sort out a priority needs service. But in recent times, we're making sure that everybody, as soon as they enter one of our sites, can get seen to within 2 minutes and then triaged for the appropriate service approach. We're increasingly trying to get all the service. I think this will be, in a few years' time, we will not have paper in our offices. We'll do this digitally, and I think we're still challenged by a bit of the old world, new world, but trying to make sure everybody knows what's available for them at any one point in time. We draw in our non-government partners, and this is that one-stop shop site, and these other non-government organisations provide a really important level of service in our country. So what we're trying to do in our one-stop shops is create an opportunity for other service providers to join with us, so that they can also help and assist with that individual customer, but they also like joining with us because they get access to good facilities and good capability. We have invested in mobile offices. These are quite large units, as you can see, and they have full IT capability. And most recently, we've had some flooding and bushfires in our country, and these units were quickly located, and within, in some situations, half an hour before the Prime Minister would arrive to see what we were doing, we would set up this mobile office. And it's a great opportunity to showcase what we do and take our services to where people don't have access to mainstream services and facilities. Increasingly, I showed what we have to do. We have to be very innovative. This is in one of those isolated communities in the centre of Australia. We've got a very, very smart IT shop. We use satellite capability and really attempting to take the service to where people need it. In terms of simplifying our processes and improving online services, this is one of the big change issues for us. And I think this is one of the learnings that if you can put in place in your country processes that are simple and straightforward, they're going to be much easier then to move into it. Reduced our cost in the last 12 months by 10%, and we have further to go. And in my world, that largely means staff. Most of my cost is involved in staff time and effort, and what we're trying to do is minimise the number of interactions it takes for an individual to deal with government, so that we don't need as many staff to do the work, so we're more efficient, but hopefully also more effective, because people are getting the things that they need in a more efficient way. This is our progress in terms of online service delivery. Online has just grown and grown and grown, but the challenge for us as an organisation, we still have quite a lot of work and activity in the more expensive face-to-face area. So we're challenged about how do we move people from the face-to-face and telephony work that cost staff time into the self-service world, which is a huge challenge for us. We've invested heavily. We've just launched four mobile apps, and they are really well received. We're in a situation now where people can literally take a photo of their ID and transfer that through, and it'll attach to their digital record. So we're close to really creating a digital presence where, for most things, people can do more of the work themselves. And there's no doubt about it, the usage of these things has transformed the work and activity. The challenge, however, is that what we've got in our country, and I don't know in the UAE, but we still have a digital divide. There's still some people, older Australians, people with limited literacy and numeracy, who won't make the transfer into the digital world. So we'll always maintain a presence for those individuals in a face-to-face setting. We're using social media extensively, like everybody, and I think you're a market leader in this area. I'm told that your rankings went straight to #1 in terms of social media, in terms of how to use that to get citizen feedback, and we need to be doing more in that area. We've identified that for social media, not just as a means to get information, but how do you do service delivery through social media. And some of our big telecommunications companies are literally using, or have almost outsourced their service desk to their social media capability, because users are telling other users about how to use their smartphones or their capabilities. So we're exploring what that means into the future, and I think there's a huge opportunity there. The integration for us as a department is massive. So I can't tell you how difficult and challenging this is. We're trying to move to old legacy systems into new age, smart SAP approaches to how we do our work. We're trying to get a single sign-on for all our staff, single user workspace for all our customer interaction, and we have a massive program of reform. We're in an ICT sense, the biggest IT shop in the Southern Hemisphere, and you know, that's just a part of the capability of monitoring our performance. I don't even know what they are. I'm not an IT expert, but I'm told that's a lot of servers, and it's very important. But the challenge for us in terms of an ICT challenge is huge. For the UAE, you really have some big choices to make in terms of ICT. We have legacy systems, and some of those systems to change and upgrade into modern kind of capability will be many hundreds of millions of dollars. And so we have to prove to government that by investing in this area, it can improve things. One of the things that challenges us, we generate about 100 million letters a year, and in doing that, you know, it's a very challenging thing to get them, you know, dealt with in a sensible way. We're really putting hard, and there's a picture of my colleague here, of getting the corporate identity. So we've had 4 agencies come together, how to get a uniform approach and look, and really trying to improve our corporate look and feel, providing you know, uniforms to our staff. We wear our badges, we're proud of our badges, and we're proud of the organisation that we work for. One of the things in terms of our staff is that in our last staff poll, 93% of staff said that they go the extra mile or the extra effort to meet customers' needs. So we've perfected that approach to get our staff connected with us. Recently there has been a government thing that's done a review of us, and I think it's a very good model. They looked at leadership, strategy, and how you actually deploy that capability and get the results. It came from the UK. We often, you know, shamelessly look at wherever else in the world good things are coming, and out of that review, this is the sorts of feedback that we got. We had exceptional performance and reliability. We made sure we paid the pensioners and kept the machine running 24/7. We responded to significant crises, and so we've got the ability for when Australians get in trouble, we deploy capability. We often become second after defence to get into the field. We've got a workforce who operate with conviction and commitment, and at 93% of staff ready to go the extra mile, you know, is a great indicator. We're exciting and innovative practices, and we've got successful implementation of change. Now that doesn't mean it was all perfect, because there's a bunch of other things that we have to do to improve on, and we've got an active program of moving forward in that area. But that's telling us that the new organisation we've created in the last 12 months is on the right pathway, but much more work to do. This is the Channel Operations Facility. This is the world I live in. You know, every minute of every day I know exactly what's going on, transactions, work and activity. I can zero in on every individual office, call centre, processing team, and it gives me a finger on the pulse of all the activity and the work across 55 million calls a year and hundreds of millions of transactions every day or every year. We respond to the emergencies I talked about. This is our office in a box capability. We've got the ability quickly to deploy assets to have, as long as we've got power, we can set up mobile computing anywhere and provide service to citizens within a matter of hours, and we've earned ourselves a great regard for that. It's one example how we often use the Australian Defence Force to get us into these difficult situations. And this is a picture of our Prime Minister in the field in a very challenging flood event. It's great for our staff. They really do rise to the occasion and put in that extra effort, which is fantastic when Australian citizens are in trouble. So key ingredients for success, and this is the last couple of slides, so you'll be glad. We're going to throw quickly now to some conversation. But really we put the customers at the centre of our business. We really do concentrate on what the needs of the customers are. We really go hard at looking at trends and patterns in customer satisfaction and making sure that we improve that in every possible way. We focus purely on service delivery. I get involved in policy conversations with the departments, but in a sense we deliver services on behalf of ministries. And in this sense, and we might talk about that as one of the items we want to discuss about the maturity of governance approaches. So probably every country that comes to visit us and they are fascinated about our governance approach. How can you have a service delivery agency running the services on behalf of other ministries? How do ministers know that they're going to get what they want? And we can talk a little bit about that in the Q&A. We've set ourselves up as the engine room for government. We're there, we're capable, we're ready to deploy, and we've got brand recognition. So the brands of Centrelink and Medicare, Child Support Agency, even though we've got an umbrella department, they're still known and thought of, and there's a strong brand identity with both citizens and the government. And the bottom line, size matters. We can do things that smaller agencies can only ever dream of because of our size and capacity. This tells you about our journey on customer satisfaction, one of the things I'm proudest of. You can see in the 60s% in, where's that, 99, 2000, and well above 85%. And we really do want to just improve that and improve that. But that's been a hard trajectory for us and something we're very proud of. So the future for us, we really want to be an organisation that not only puts customers at the centre but improves the lives of all Australians. So our charter is really to improve the outcomes for citizens, not just to provide a payment or service, but really try to think about the total package. We want processes simplified, improved and understandable, and so really work hard on that. I can't overestimate the importance of that, of simplifying those processes, because in government we are very good at setting up regulation and setting up complex processes for people to get access to things that confuse everybody, even if they're there for the best purpose. We want a more intuitive service delivery system integrated with community stakeholders rather than a simple transactional-based model. And clearly what we want to do is figure out how to make, enable effort to be more focused on those who need extra support at acute times. So that's all I'm going to say, and I hope I've given you the run-through and a snapshot, and I'll hand it over for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. شكرا سيد جرانت على العرض الجميل صراحة في عرض تجربة استراليا. أنا دوري هني مش بس كمودريتر وأنا أنقلكم الحوار، لكن أنا أبغي أنقل صوتكم أيضا إلى الحوار هذا. فاللي عنده تابلت ممكن إنه يرسل لي التابلت عن طريق التابلت الأسئلة، أو ممكن أستخدم بعد الميكروفونات اللي موجودة. سيد جرانت، عرضت تجربة استراليا في ملخص وبكل تواضع. يعني حسيت أن في أشياء أخرى تجربة استراليا عملتوا فيها، يعني أبهرتوا فيها العالم، اللي بدأت الحكومات أحيانا تأخذ من تحتذي في خطاكم. سؤالي الأول لك سيد جرانتي، ما هي المحركات اللي أدت إلى إعادة هيكلة الخدمات عندكم في استراليا؟ شو كانت هي الدوافع في 97 اذا نحن رجعنا لذاك السنه ورجعنا 97، شو كانت اللي هي المحركات واسباب المشاكل اللي خلتكم تعيدون هيكله الخدمات الحكوميه في تقديم في طريقه تقديم الخدمه؟
Well, I think fundamentally what we have in an Australian context is a generous system of entitlements to citizens. But it's complicated, it's rule-driven, it's difficult for people to get what they want. So the journey we started and the journey we continue on is how to demystify and make it simpler for citizens to access services. So, you know, we were established and created to create a one-stop shop. We've improved that and brought more services in, and we want to continue to do that and go beyond. We'd like to think that we can be we are the largest service delivery organisation for the Australian government, but we like to believe that we can do more and improve our services in that area. So essentially it really is taking the complexity out of the way in which citizens connect with government, making it more seamless, making it simpler, and you'd hope as a result not only making it more efficient, which we've proven over time, but more effective in so that you have a more harmonious, enriched community and society. Like every country, we've got our own wicked problems. We have too many people who struggle to find a pathway in life, either for employment purposes or getting access to services because of some disability or some issues with some mental health conditions. So, you know, our role is to try and improve on behalf of all those individuals a better life and a better set of circumstances. So, in my view, this journey will never finish. You'll constantly be trying to improve, and one of the things we've been really conscious of. We try and learn from wherever, whether it's the private sector, whether it's the UAE, whether it's Canada, whether it's the US. Increasingly, India is doing some extraordinary things in terms of e-government, and we try then and take that back and put that in place to improve our service provision. And I think if you've got an inquiring culture, a culture, you know, your organisation that always wants to do the extra, I think you can achieve great things.
شكرا سيد جرانت. انتقل لسؤالي الثاني، يعني سؤال في عرضك يا سيد جرانت طرقت انك انت جلبت بعض الخدمات من جهات متفرقه في منطقه واحده اللي هي one stop shop. كما نعلم ان احنا في دوله الامارات او الدول المجاوره في الحكومه الاتحاديه وحتى في الحكومه المحليه، لو تطرقنا للموضوع هذا، اذا انت تجلس مع قياديين في الحكومه وتطلب منهم انك انت بتاخذ من عندهم سلطه وتاخذ من عندهم باور في تقديم خدمه من جهه لجهه، توجد بعض التحديات. كيف قدرتوا في استراليا انكم تتغلبون على هذا النوع من اخذ السلطه من جهه لجهه، في ناحيه انه حطيتوا الكاستمر في قلب الموضوع وجلت له حدود؟
Well, this has been one of the big learnings for us, is the challenge in how you deliver services for government from multiple ministries. It doesn't matter whether it's the Ministry for Health, Ministry for Education, Ministry for Environment, Ministry for Employment, the Ministry for Foreign Affairs. So we've developed processes. Originally when we started this, it was very much the private sector model of codifying the outputs to be delivered and the price. And then we would have long conversations with the ministries about how people will get this service or that service. Over time, we've matured that approach, because I think our internal stakeholders across government now appreciate that there's a base level of money that we get to deliver a whole raft of things. And so increasingly now the ministries concentrate not so much on the inputs, but more so on the outcomes that they want to see achieved. And but that's been a long journey, a difficult journey, and it is not without its challenges, because every so often I'm sure this would happen in your country. A minister has a very strong passion to ensure that school literacy is improved, or that nutrition is provided in a better way, or medical services are distributed more evenly. And they would have a particular passion and commitment. So the challenge for us is always to know that the only reason we exist is because government asked us to do things. And in that sense, we work very hard with our ministers and our stakeholders to prove that we can do all the things we can do and then more. But I think it's one of probably the most challenging thing if you create a one-stop shop for service delivery. Because the one thing you don't want to do, you don't want to have a separate counter for medical services, a separate counter for education services, separate counter for disability services. You want to try and integrate that approach. There's nothing worse, I think, than going into a one-stop shop, but you've got to go to 10 different counters to get the service you need. And so effectively a one-stop shop for service delivery, because that's what citizens want, challenges the very nature of government and ministries and how you move forward in that area. The solution for your country will be different to the solution in Australia, but I think we've improved those governance processes. Doesn't mean we don't have strong debates and conversations, and occasionally I get very involved in why aren't I processing this piece of work faster than that piece of work. But by and large, we've developed that ability to be seen as the government service provider, and we go out of our way to make sure that when Australians are in real need, that we help them. Our Prime Minister knows that and sings our praises loudly as a result.
شكرا سيد جرانت على إجابتك للسؤال هذا، وهذا اللي يدخلني في السؤال الثاني. سوف آخذ سؤال، أطرح على سيد جرانت سؤال وثم بأخذ أسئلة من الحضور. سؤالي سيد جرانت، نحن دائما نعرف إذا نحن نبغي ندخل فكرة جديدة في مؤسسة أو وزارة، دائما ما تكون هناك في نوع من التحدي في تغيير الثقافة المؤسسية، في تغيير بعض من الخدمات. كيف قدرتوا أنتم بخلال السنوات هذه الماضية تغيير ثقافة الموظفين عندكم في تقديم الخدمة، من تقديم الخدمة الاعتيادية والتقليدية إلى تقديم خدمة مبتكرة بشكل سريع؟
Well, this has been an absolute big challenge for us, because when we started this journey in 1997, we had some staff, or many staff, who thought their role was simply to administer the rules. And this would be familiar to all of you, I'm sure, and it's certainly been familiar to me in my experience with government, where you don't know what the rules are as a citizen. That's because the holder of the rules is the staff member. In many situations, rather than talking about customers, we talked about beneficiaries. And one of the things we did, we said we're going to call the people we serve customers. We knew in some senses that they weren't really customers, because they couldn't go and take their business elsewhere. But we wanted to instill and encourage a culture of serving and treating people as customers. So we went very hard with that. We had big debates about that, and you'll notice that I use citizen and customer interchangeably. But I think what it did, it established a customer-driven culture. The reason we exist is because people come to see us, or have to make telephone calls, or do work on the internet or on mobile applications to get the services that they need. And so we moved from being, you need to come and see us, we know all the rules, to saying we're here to help you. We're established to ensure that we can deliver the best possible range of services, and how can we extend that approach and service direction. One of the things we did in our early days, we had some workshops we would run right across the country where we would invite our customers to come in. They would talk to a facilitator and tell us about the service. Our staff would sit on in the extremities in a circle around. They would not be allowed to participate, they just had to listen. And they'd have to listen and respond. And I think that created a unique environment. These days, we constantly survey our customers, and one of the things in particular that we look at the complaints and what's going on and how we can improve in that area, so that where we've got systemic issues, that we can take action across the organisation to improve things in that area. So I think we've learned a lot from the private sector. We've established those mechanisms and processes that you'll see across any service organisation, and relentlessly look at how we can improve our services to create that more customer-centred organisation.
ممتاز. تطرقت سيد جرانت على فكرة، يعني نحن دائما ما نعمل ورش عمل ما تكون هي ورش عمل لموظفين حكومة أو موظفين في القطاع الخاص، لكن ورشة عمل للكاستمرز هذا شيء صراحة ممكن نحن نستفيد منه ونتعلم من تجربة استراليا، أنه ممكن ننقل نحن ورش العمل اللي هم من متلقي الخدمة، نستفيد منهم بصهدون، نتعلم كيف نسمع، نتعلم كيف ناخذ ونطور من خدماتنا. خلينا ناخذ اسئله من الحضور اللي عنده سؤال. اوكي، خلينا ناخذ سؤال هنا في المقدمه وبعدين ناخذ سؤال نص.
شكرا. حسين الشيخ، وزاره الشؤون الاجتماعيه. اولا الشكر لك اخ عبد الله لادارتك الورشه، والشكر موصول لضيفك الكريم الاستاذ جرانت اللي فتح لنا نافذه. نحن نتطلع في الامارات ان احنا ايضا نطبق نماذج متطوره من العالم. سؤالي استاذ جرانت، يعني معرفتي بالنسبه النظام الاداري في استراليا ان هناك السلطه الاتحاديه ثم هناك الولايات، يعني في ولايه ويلز وولايه فيكتوريا. فهل السنترلينك هو يعني منظومه اتحاديه او ان هناك سنترلينك على مستوى ولايه ويلز او فيكتوريا يقوم بهذا، خاصه لانك لو كنت على مستوى اتحادي يعني كيف انت تربط نجاحك بمدى نجاح المؤسسات المحليه في توفير الخدمه؟ المواطن الاسترالي في اي ولايه لو لجأ للسنترلينك ولربما انت تحاول ان تساعده، ولكن الخدمه ربما تكون دون المستوى او غير متوفره فنجاحك كسنترلينك مرتبط بتوفر هذه الخدمات او نجاح هذه الولايات في توفير هذه الخدمه. فهذه النقطه اللي ممكن تكون محل تساؤل او اشكاليه. شكرا.
It's a very, very good question, and we are on a journey to improve in that area, but we have not got this right yet. So you're absolutely right that in Australia, similar to UAE, we have federal and state government, and quite often, say for example, if you're an older person who doesn't have a lot of money and might have some illness, they will get some service from the state government as well as from us. And so what we're increasingly trying to do is to work with state governments, non-government organisations and us to wrap the service around the individual. So we're inviting the state government service providers to co-work with us with particular individuals on particular topics. And we think that is a great. We're not trying to take over. There's always that tension about big brother taking over a smaller cousin. But what we're trying to do is assist the state governments and the individual concerned or the family to deliver a better service approach. And by and large, state governments are saying this is a good thing because they're struggling to provide a service. And if we all join up, it can be a much better approach. So again, not only in an Australian government sense, on the federal sphere, a single sign-on, a single approach, tell us your story once, but you can also do that across the rest of the service provision. And so what we've become is almost, to become a service provider that assist to create this capability. Rather than doing it on behalf of state governments, we provide capacity, capability and co-working arrangements for shared customer outcomes.
ممتاز. نقطة مهمة. شكرا على سؤالك اللي طرحته من بين يتدارك بين الاتحادي والمحلي والتجربة بين استراليا اللي هي تجربة مماثلة لدولة الإمارات. خلينا ناخذ سؤال ثاني من الحضور. بس نقدر ناخذ المايك.
شكرا ما قصر. شكرا استاذ جرانت، شاكرين لك وسعداء يعني بحضور ورشتك مع اني جيت متاخر. انا عشت في استراليا ودرست في استراليا وعملت في استراليا واعرف قوانين استراليا كيف انها جيده وقوانين يعني منظمه، لكن دائما يعني يراودني هذا السؤال: هل هناك اولويه للمواطن الاسترالي في الاستفادة من الخدمات على الوافدين في استراليا؟ وإن لم يكن، هل هناك مشكلة على سبيل المثال إذا أردنا أن نسقط هذا النظام في الإمارات، هل هناك مشكلة أن نجعل مثلا خدمات خاصة أو أولوية لأبناء البلد على الآخرين؟ وهل هذا يتعارض مع المساواة والعدل أو العدالة؟ شكرا.
A very, very good question and a challenging question. We use the term citizen, although we provide services to non-citizens. So in our country, we do have a humanitarian refugee intake. It is a vexed policy issue that's debated quite strongly in our country and in terms of who can come to our country and how people arrive in our country, but we do provide some limited services to non-citizens. But one of the things that we have in place in our country, in a sense, is that we do provide universal services, but it's always done so in a way that if you have higher need, you get more from government than if you have low needs. And so in that context, it's always hotly contested about what non-citizens will get in terms of support and services. Now, you'd know how close we are to New Zealand. We have many New Zealanders who come and work in Australia, and whilst we have very close economic ties with New Zealand, we do still insist that they have to be either a citizen of Australia or spend some considerable time before they get access to the full suite of benefits and services. So there are circumstances where people will get support from the Australian government when they're non-citizens for humanitarian purposes and other purposes, but by and large the assistance is directed firmly and squarely at citizens. Now, I know that is a challenge for your country, a huge challenge, and I'm not going to sit here and suggest any particular solutions, but that's how we've adopted it. There were some big outcries, particularly from some countries. One of the policy settings we've set in place, though, is we have reciprocal rights with countries. So, for example, you could be of Greek heritage and you've worked 30 years in Australia, but you worked 20 years in Greece. And so you might get a Greek pension and an Australian pension. And we work with Greek governments and other governments to sort of moderate the expense on behalf of the Australian government. So there's no doubt about it, in our system, unlike the Scandinavian system, we ration more of our benefits to those higher in need. But your particular challenge here, I think, is a challenging one, and I don't profess to have any particular clever ideas. But in a small way, we have a similar issue and dilemma in terms of how we ration our services.
دائما في تقديم الخدمات توجد هناك تحديات خاصة بين فئات من المجتمع ودائما ما هي نسعى نحن كموظفين أو قياديين في الحكومة إلى تطوير خدماتنا لأن نستطيع نوصل إلى الهدف المرجو من تقديم الخدمة. أنا باخذ سؤال آخر من الحضور ومن ثم برجع على بعض الأسئلة عندي موجودة هني ونرجع مرة ثانية إن شاء الله بعد الحضور ناخذ بعد أسئلة قبل أن ننهي اللقاء. سؤال هني في النص.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I have two quick questions, actually. The first one is, it's a bit surprising, this history of the service delivery in Australia. I mean, in a country where it's so big, so large, very diverse, different government layers, somehow you found out that a unified agency for service delivery is something that could work. But my question is, how do you contrast this with the argument that you need, in a context that is so diversified like this, you will need much more decentralized approaches basically to deliver services? And how do you manage the risk of becoming too big? I mean, what you've explained in terms of the size and the complexity of the agency you're running is phenomenal, in fact, very, very impressive. And I'm just wondering, how do you manage that? The second point in terms of impact or results. So you showed us one graph about customer satisfaction. It seems that these service delivery are working. Customers are more satisfied, at least according to this indicator. But what about resources? What about funding? I mean, or value for money? How do you have a sense in terms of efficiency of these programs? Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. Look, in terms of, I'll take the latter first. So in terms of efficiency, Boston Consulting did some work, maybe 8 years or so ago, and looked at the merger then to create Centrelink, and we'd reduced our operating cost by 19%. And the view there from Boston, and they're obviously a very reputable consulting company, that was pretty typical of a large merger, whether it be the private sector or government sector. So we did all the sort of things you'd assume. You only need one corporate services, one management structure, one approach to doing things, and you can reduce your overheads accordingly. It's not rocket science, and by doing that, for example, one-stop shop, you just need one office, etc. So one of the things that we're doing as we speak is we are looking at our outlets across the country and rationalising and saving on our leasehold costs accordingly. So there are opportunities, and size does help. The reverse of that is exactly the question that you raised. Do you get too big that you become too disconnected? Now, what we run across our countries, we carve up our country into 16 parts, and we have people called service leaders that are responsible for those 16 components. And their job is not only to deliver the outputs, but to think about the community. Think about the constituency that lives there. What are the special needs and circumstances? And it's going to be very different between an urban metropolitan area in Sydney or Melbourne, by any definition large international cities, as it will be in the outback and the wilderness and in the desert, about how you deliver services. So we've charged those stuff and particularly to say, you need to think about your community and how best you're going to provide that services. And we're going to back you if you're going to do things or take approaches that are going to deliver better results in terms of those individuals. So Ms. Sheetha here has a part of the country and knows that country better than I ever will, knows the circumstances, understands. What we've got is we've got people in virtually in every town in Australia, and they feed information in and give us a sense of what's going on. So we draw off our community of staff to provide advice about how better to assist services. Now, yes, customer satisfaction's improved, staff satisfaction is improved. What we'd like to come back and present a convincing case to government, that's what we're trying to do, is that we can actually, by the effort we put in, improve people's life expectancy, improve people's capacity to get a job, assist people with a disability to have a better life. And they're the sorts of things that we want to take it to the next level, so that we're not just doing this work to administer payments and entitlements, but in fact what we're doing is helping Australia.
سيد جرانت، ذكرت سيرفيس ليدر، قائد خدمات، بشكل سريع ومفصل. هذه واحدة من الأشياء اللي لاحظتها في استراليا، أنكم تعينون أشخاص معنيين بمهمة بمعرفة ما هي متطلبات الكاستمرز، بأنه يقود إعادة إصلاح تقديم الخدمات، يشوف شو هي البروسيسز اللي هي العمليات اللي موجودة في الخدمات وإعادة تصليحها من ناحية أن تخدم في النهاية العميل بشكل أفضل. وهذه تجربة ممكن نستفيد منها في دولة الإمارات ونطبقها بتعيين أشخاص متخصصين همهم واهتمامهم هي تقديم الخدمات بشكل أفضل. أنا عندي سؤال سيد جرانت، انتقل لسؤالي الثاني اللي هو سؤال في الاستثمار. دائما نحن في جهات الحكومية اتحادية كانت أو محلية ما نستثمر في أنظمة تقنية منعزلة عن جهات أخرى، فكل جهة عندها تنفق استثمارات حكومية من ميزانية الحكومة إلى أنظمة تقنية، لكن كل نظام مختلف عن الثاني. كيف قدرتوا تتغلبون على هذه؟ وإذا أنت كنت بدورك لعبت دور مستشار للحكومة، شو بتكون نصيحتك في أنك أنت تتجنب هذه التحدي اللي تواجه الحكومات؟
I think this is one of the biggest challenges that we've faced, is that what we've inherited is multiple different platforms, multiple different operating systems, capability that doesn't logically connect, and we're on a pathway now to try and join that up and try and think through what's the best approach to making it as in a uniform approach and strategy. So we're trying to build a capability that that would look the same wherever a staff member was connected with a customer in our organisation, and we're trying to build the same capability for when the citizens do the work themselves, to try and make sure it's seamless, it's connected. Don't have one operating system for staff, a different operating system for customers if they're doing work. How do you join that up? And the challenges are, for our staff, and we're experiencing that at the moment, and for stakeholders, is some of the things they used to have in their old systems or their old capability, you mightn't get it exactly as you had it. And so you have a huge change management issue. But, you know, interoperability of operating systems is just so essential. You do not want to have separate operating systems that you then end up with a huge problem, difficult to address, really makes it almost impossible to integrate unless you spend a fortune on it. So what we're trying to do now is move the legacy systems we have into a single capability and operating layer that's seamless and moving forward. And you know, if there's one thing that I would say in the UAE, if you can challenge the paradigm that everybody has to have their own CRM system, their own operating system, and because they're special from this ministry to that ministry, you need to because your chance then of trying to join it all up is harder. Now, maybe technology will get so smart that it won't matter anymore. Maybe technology will get it to a situation, and I'm sure the IT companies, if there's any in the room, will probably tell you they've got the answer for you. But I can tell you from where we sit, it's a huge challenge and a big headache, and we're very much in that process at the moment. We're changing all the operating systems for 36,000 staff, from their email system to the system they use to talk to customers. And it is challenging and difficult.